For nearly 9 decades, the name Amelia Earhart has hung in the sky like a ghost ship, a legend frozen somewhere between triumph and tragedy. She was the woman who dared to dream that the clouds had no ceiling. The girl from Kansas who laughed at the idea that the sky was for men alone. And then on July 2nd, 1937, she vanished, swallowed by an endless stretch of ocean, leaving behind only rumors, half-buried clues, and a haunting question. What really happened to Amelia Earhart? Every generation since has taken its turn trying to solve the riddle. Convinced they could trace her final flight path, decode her last radio transmission, find a shred of her silver Lockheed Electra glinting beneath the waves. But what if the truth they finally unearthed was something no one wanted to believe? Something so much worse than a simple plane crash lost to the Pacific tides. It turns out the answer was always there, buried in dusty military reports, whispered by old men who drank their secrets away in dimly lit bars and etched into the diaries of islanders who saw something they could never explain. For decades, historians insisted Amelia must have run out of fuel and ditched at sea. Others swore she made it to an island Niku Maroro, maybe only to die alone under a relentless sun. Her final days spent scrawling desperate SOS messages in the sand. But the new evidence tells a different story, a darker one. The truth is, Amelia Earhart didn't die alone. She died betrayed, stranded not by nature's cruelty, but by human hands determined to erase her from the sky she claimed as her own. The paper trail begins in a musty archive in Washington, D.C., where a declassified memo sat ignored for decades. It mentions a coded message intercepted 3 days after Amelia's final transmission, as signal faint and fractured, but unmistakably her voice begging for help. The coordinates put her nowhere near Niku Maroro. They place her on a tiny atoll, one so remote even seasoned sailors avoided its razor-sharp reefs. The atoll was marked as a strategic observation point by the Japanese Imperial Navy and outposts, so secret that its existence remained off official maps until long after World War II. There are photos, 2 grainy black and white shots once dismissed as hoaxes. One shows a woman in aviator trousers sitting on a dock under armed guard. Her hair is tied back, but the bone structure, the slight slouch of her shoulders, it's Amelia. Next to her sits Fred Noonan, her navigator, eyes sunken, a bandage wrapped around his head, but it's the diary that seals it. Found in the false bottom of a cedar chest on Saipan, the diary belonged to a local woman named Yuki. In looping, nervous handwriting, she described the day the woman who fell from the sky arrived bruised, sunburned, but alive. Yuki wrote about how the villagers whispered that she was a spy, that she'd flown too close to something the Japanese military wanted hidden. They locked her away in a bamboo hut, guarded day and night. She was fed scraps, questioned relentlessly, forced to sign statements in a language she didn't speak. Yuki's entries become harder to read as the days drag on short. Frantic notes about the American woman's spirit breaking, about the navigator's fever worsening, about the soldiers whispering that they couldn't let the prisoners go. The final entry is the worst. The Sky Woman is gone, taken at night. No one saw her again. For years, the U.S. government denied these rumors. They needed Amelia to remain the hero lost to the waves. A rallying myth for a nation teetering on the brink of war. Admitting she'd been captured would have sparked a firestorm of questions America wasn't ready to answer. So they buried at the intercepted signals, the blurry photos, the eyewitness accounts. They let the world believe she died heroically, battling the elements. Her final words swallowed by static and salt water. But the truth is, Amelia Earhart was left to rot in a prison cell on a speck of land she never meant to find a pawn in a geopolitical game that erased her name while enshrining her legend when researchers brought this new evidence to light. The reaction was explosive. Some clung to the old stories, insisting the diary was a forgery, the photos doctored, the memo a relic of Cold War paranoia. But for others, the ones who'd spent their lives chasing every lead, every fragment of radio chatter, it made horrible sense. How else could one of the most famous women in the world vanish so completely with no wreckage, no remains, no definitive proof? How else could all those scattered sightings, the islanders who swore they'd seen a white woman building signal fires, the fishermen who found scraps of aluminum stamped with Lockheed serial numbers, have been so easily dismissed? And the hardest part is what it says about us, about how we treat our heroes when they stop being useful myths and become inconvenient truths. We wanted Amelia to be a symbol, fearless, free, frozen in time with her goggles perched on her forehead, forever waving from the cockpit of her Electra. We didn't want her to be human, frightened, starving, her fingernails clawing at bamboo walls as the ocean she loved lapped just beyond her reach. We didn't want her to die because we failed her, because politics and secrets mattered more than the life of the woman who made the world believe the sky belonged to everyone. Now, more than 86 years later, they're planning an expedition to the adult, a final mission to find the truth in the coral and salt and sand. Maybe they'll find a scrap of her plane hidden under the jungle canopy. Maybe they'll find her bones, weathered but defiant, waiting for the world to finally bring her home. Or maybe they'll find nothing at all. Just the whisper of waves against the reef. The ghost of a legend who's no longer content to stay silent. Because the real tragedy isn't that Amelia Earhart vanished. It's that we let her disappear twice. Once into the ocean and once into a lie that was easier to swallow than the truth. And if you stand on the edge of that at all with the Pacific wind roaring in your ears, you can almost hear her voice drifting through the static. A final call for help unanswered for far too long. Tap the bell.